Hey everybody, it's Ken Tucker with Changescape Web. We are here today with Jen, Ian, and Paul, and we are going to be talking about, does direct marketing still work? So this is a topic that I think there are a lot of mixed opinions about, and I think it's a topic that I think a lot of people overlook and forget about when it comes to marketing, but it's still a topic very, very much worth exploring. So let's just jump right into it today. And I am going to start with you, Ian. Does direct marketing still work? And if so, who should be using it?
Direct marketing and direct mail is dead, everybody. That's the end of this presentation. Goodbye. And I'm just joking. That's actually a common thing you'll find online. If you look up, is direct mail dead, or does direct mail work? I'm actually really excited about this discussion today, because I think the four of us all come with a unique point of views that we can share with our listeners. From my point of view, I absolutely think direct mail still has a really valuable place in our marketing quiver of arrows, or our marketing toolbox, whatever metaphor we want to use. I think it's changed, though. I think direct mail does work. I think you have to be more thoughtful and strategic with it. I think you always should have been, but I think now it needs to integrate with your other marketing, and you want to wean your people off of it. So your contacts that you're trying to reach, you want to move them to digital methods as quickly as possible, because direct mail is still very expensive, especially if you do it creatively and well. So for just to answer your question, Ken, I think it works for both business to business and business to consumer. But you have to plan it. You have to be strategic. You have to know who you're targeting. You have to be able to measure it, so track it. And again, I think, from my perspective, the real key is to move people off of that expensive medium, and also ensure that you're not using direct mail at the expense of other cheaper, more effective methods. And I think that's why people say direct mail is dead a lot, because there are cheaper, more effective methods to reach people. But direct mail is very unique in that it's not governed by CAN-SPAM or Castle in Canada, or these rules of reaching out to people. So as a top of the funnel method, or even as a building your brand in front of people, especially within a particular target audience, it can work quite well.
Yeah. Paul, what's the biggest mistake you see businesses make when they do direct mail?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, is they just want to do one mass mailing and be done with it. And that's never going to work, because it goes back to the number of touch points needed, as we've talked in other episodes. You have to pick an audience or an area, and you need to send out at least 3 campaigns. And maybe that means, instead of doing one huge mailing and blanketing a larger area, you pick a smaller area so that you can keep your budget the same and target that specific area more effectively. And the other thing kind of goes back to what Ian said about it being at the top of the funnel. And this depends on how much planning and effort you want to put into it. But you can actually make direct mail a part of your funnel, where you have your top of the funnel, and then your middle of the funnel, so to speak, where you're kind of getting to know them. Top of the funnel is brand awareness, and then bottom of the funnel, where they're getting close to that purchase decision. And that does take time and effort and planning, but it will make it more effective. Definitely.
That's an interesting point, Paul. You made me think about something. Political campaigns very often use direct mail for the entire funnel. I mean, it may be the majority of their funnel, even in certain campaigns, but the bottom of the funnel kind of a thing is that last mail piece that goes out a couple of days before people are expected to go to the polls. And this is changing, obviously, with people's ability to do early voting and whatnot. But to send that mail piece out to people to say, hey, remember to vote on such and such a date, and here's who you want to vote for. And that's a very effective bottom of the funnel kind of a strategy with direct mail. So it's not always just top of the funnel, but and especially if you've, in the political campaign example, you've been working to refine your and qualify your leads. So at that point, that bottom of the funnel email is really going to be going to the people that you feel very strongly are going to be most likely to vote for you, because you don't want to remind people to go vote for your competitor if that's what they're already inclined to do, right? So you would want to send that to a very targeted group. Jen, we've talked about this a little bit. I think Ian kind of mentioned it just very briefly, but do you need to integrate direct mail with other marketing efforts? And if so, what do you recommend there?
Yeah. First of all, yes, you do, for sure. I've got two examples of campaigns that we've actually done with clients. So one of them was, if I call it a small direct mail campaign, so small, they were letters out to 100 targeted warm leads, and it was a software company. So what we did is we sent a dedicated letter out to everybody. It was, we had the name, the right titles, all the right information. And then the person who would be their account manager, their sales contact, if they would have bought this piece of software, was the person that actually, another old-fashioned method was calling to follow up on the delivery of the letter. Yeah. And funny thing is, this was a challenging campaign to sell in, because you've got two old-fashioned methods, if you will, right? Direct mail and following up with the telephone call. But it turned out very well. I mean, I'm not allowed to say what the numbers were, but the response that the salesperson got when calling, "Oh yes, I do remember getting your letter," was quite high. So that was great. And then the ability to walk them through, bring them through the funnel to close business. It was definitely a high touch kind of campaign, but it was worth it for sure. So that's one example. So a mailing out and then a follow-up phone call. Like I said, though, this is quite small, so very, very dedicated with 100 people. This couldn't be a thing that you're following up with several 100,000.
Yeah, real quick, Jen, so that sounds like that was probably a bigger ticket. Type of
yes,
too, right?
Very much so. Yeah, very B2B, very yeah, several $1,000s per month for sure. Once folks signed on to the software, for sure, that was. The other, I guess, example would be a drives to, a next action. So you get your mail piece. Are you driving people to a website? Are you driving them to a specific thing online so they can either enter something, find out more information? You want them to be taking the next step, that's for sure. So yeah, this mailing one and done, I would agree with Paul, like you don't want to be doing that. So, but direct mail is neat that way, because we've all experienced the mass mailings, right? You get the flyers, you get whatever, that doesn't seem very personalized, but then you can go very ultra personalized. Now, I do have to say a caveat, these campaigns were done prior to COVID. So mailing to a business address was like, not an issue at all. So things are a little bit different right now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, the evolution of the types of mail that you can send has been really kind of fascinating to watch over the last 10 years. Because they can bake in a lot of technology that's actually pretty cool. Paul, walk me through another example of a direct mail campaign that might work for a B2B type of business. Jen just mentioned one. Do you have another idea of what would work for a B2B?
Well, I can expand on it a little bit. One thing that people forget is that direct mail in a lot of ways is not that much different from an email campaign or anything else. You have to have a list, okay? You start with your list, and then you have to have an offer, like what problems do you solve, or can you solve your potential customers' problems. And then there's the presentation. There's been a lot of success with what's called bulky mail. People think of direct mail and they think of flat mail pieces, but you can do lumpy mail. You can mail them a cube, depending on what it is. But it also goes back to what Jen said, that there has to be some kind of follow-up. So I think a lot of times, and this would work with B2B or B2C, that people look at direct mail as its own little silo, and it is different. You can do a lot of unique things, like you said, with technology, but in a lot of ways, it's not that different than a digital campaign in the fact that you have to have an offer, you have to have a list, you have to have the presentation, and you, like Ian said, you have to have some way to track it, and you have to have some way to follow up.
Yeah, I really think back, this was a campaign that I did back with Changescape back in our earlier days when we were still selling some IT services in addition to doing the marketing things that we were doing. And I did a campaign where we developed a target list of 800 companies. We didn't send it to all 800, but we developed kind of our top list that we wanted to try to reach. And we sent out a campaign, and we included a $2 bill, and our ask was complete an IT security assessment of yourself, or survey, I should say, survey. And so we ask them, if you send it back to us, we'll send you a sleeve of Titleist golf balls. And so that could have worked okay just by itself. But what I found is, when you kind of combine that strategy and, people responded like crazy. I mean, our return rate was like 67%, 2/3. And, what I did is I'd call and I'd introduce myself and I'd say, hey, thanks for returning the survey. I just wanted to confirm the mailing address where you want me to send the golf balls. So it wasn't even talking about their business. It was, and that was a great icebreaker, because then they opened up and they gave you an opportunity to start to talk to them in a casual, non-business way, and so then once I got the address locked in, it's like, hey, by the way, do you have a minute? I'd like to talk to you just a little bit about your survey responses. 100% of the time they said, yeah, because we've already broken the ice, and so Jen, I love the idea of, those follow-up phone calls for that small batch, very targeted mail for like a B2B campaign, when you're selling higher ticket items, can work really, really well. Now, if you're a dentist and you're trying to reach everybody in a particular neighborhood, it's probably going to be time prohibitive for you to get on the phone and do a follow-up phone call, right? So Ian, let's move on to you. What types of direct mail campaigns are there out there? Just give us some ideas of what you know of.
All right, I'll take a deep breath here. All right, so we have things like postcards. We have letters, so old school letters, like you were just talking about, sending out letters with an assessment. We have lumpy mail. So lumpy mail is, we've talked a little bit about that, but where you put some sort of, I was going to use a term that maybe isn't what everybody would use, but something bulky so that it gets people's attention. So for a dentist, it might be a toothbrush, it might be a floss container, whatever.
Tactile.
Yeah.
You have to touch it. You have to open it. You have to do something with it.
Like in a high value business to business world, we've done bonsai plants. We've actually gotten people to, through the funnel, we get what their jersey size is and what their favorite team is. And then we get their name put on the back of the jersey. And, it's how do you create a sticky relationship there? But, every door direct mail. That's, if you want to do a mass mailing of something, mail to a targeted list. There's so many different things you can do. In fact, I'm working with one client right now, a dentist in the area who's working with a realtor about targeting new movers to the area. So that's kind of an interesting one as well. But yeah, there's so many options. Your creative options are limitless pretty much. And in fact, I would say that right now, because digital marketing and digital advertising has really taken a lot of the market share away from direct mail over the last 15 years, I would say there's more and more opportunity right now to actually connect with people because there's less direct mail. It's not like we're all receiving 20 pieces of direct mail now. We're probably only receiving 5 to 10, so it's less stuff to go through. Yeah.
So a dentist could send out caramel candies.
Exactly. Well, I just learned this week that it was a dentist who invented candy floss. So there we go.
Wow.
A long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I probably shouldn't say this because it may flood my mailbox, but there are days where I don't even get mail at my house anymore, which I never thought that would happen, So Paul, here at Changescape, we're working on a direct mail campaign where we're sending an oversized glossy postcard to targeted addresses, based on a profile that they fit, homeowners and, areas where there are strong homeowners and things like that, percentage. And we're getting, 14 to 16 businesses on this postcard. Why does that work?
I think there's a few reasons. It works for both the business sending it out and the person receiving it, because kind of going back to what Ian said, the direct mail space is less competitive now. And it's an oversized postcard that it's hard to ignore when you get it in your mailbox. It's going to get your attention. And from the business standpoint, because you can put all of these, 14, 16, I think there's even an option for 18, whatever it is, but it reduces the cost for the businesses themselves. For a business to do this on their own could cost $3,000, $4,000, maybe more. But because they're doing it with all these other businesses, you get that cost down to about $500-600 per mailing. So it's a win-win for both the business and the customer.
Yeah, I think there's another element too in that, if you've got 14 or 16 different types of businesses.
Credibility.
What's that? Credibility, but also a variety. I mean, when there's that much information on there, people are going to read it because chances are there's at least one business that they're kind of going to be sort of interested in, right? So they're probably going to look at every business maybe in a completely different way than if they just got a single postcard from a single business. It may be pretty easy for them to recognize what that is and pitch it right away. I think there's an opportunity for them to read this in a little bit more depth because of, the different businesses that might be listed on there. So
kind of a synergistic effect.
Yeah.
And I think there's a real opportunity too to do a support local campaign that's like what you guys are talking about, but kind of the header is about supporting your local businesses, because a lot of people are thoughtful about that after COVID now.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt. Jen, can you remarket to people who have received your direct mail?
Yes, you can. Absolutely can. Well, this is how you do it. Absolutely can. So what you can do, on your direct mail piece, you can have, you can direct people to a landing page specific to an offer or a service or a piece of information that the direct mail piece is about. You can also send them to, I love this when I first heard of it. I remember thinking, what the heck is that? So you say it as Pearl, as in the piece of jewelry, but it's PURL, so a personalized URL. So you as the client can actually track who that received the direct mail piece actually came to either the landing page or logged into the section on the website, took the next action. So you can do that for them. So there's a couple of different ways there that you could have your direct mail piece start to get folks into the digital world.
Yeah. So once they're on that page, whether it's a Pearl or whether it's a landing page that you're driving everybody to, you can, if you put the remarketing code on there, you can remarket on Facebook, on Google, on display networks, all of that, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely you can. And then it's just there you have it. Now you're tracking them for the next 30 days. So absolutely you can. And it's easy enough to do.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Ian, how about, let's go back to you. Can direct mail help you build up a referral partner network?
Yes, but before I answer that, I'm just going to take a step back because Jen talked about having tracking mechanisms for retargeting. one of the things I think is really important too is every business is going to have their phone number on one of these direct mail pieces. When we're doing direct mail or newspaper ads or anything old school where it's not digital based, we use phone tracking numbers that are unique either to that platform or to the campaign that we're doing, so that we can actually say, because a lot of people, I mean, the very best response is usually a phone call. As far as a return on investment, because you're getting people directly talking to you. And then the second best call to action would be clicking through to do a secondary call to action, right? So just tracking that's really, really important. So I don't want people to miss out on that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Direct mail, as far as building your referral network, yeah, of course. There's this really cool idea. I believe it was either John Jance's idea from Duct Tape Marketing, Marketing Made Simple, or it was something he took and then he modified it a bit. But it's called the reverse introduction letter. And it's a really cool idea where you're reaching out to people that are not your competitors, but can be referral sources to you, and you can be a referral source to them. And so you're basically reaching out to them and introducing yourself through, just an old school letter. And you're saying, hey, this is who we are. This is what we do. These are the ideal referrals that we would like to see. And this letter is a model that if you could respond back, and maybe on the back of it, you even include like the fields you want them to fill in. But you say, fill in the back, send it back to me because I want to be able to refer to you. It's really all about starting that relationship and creating a win-win for you and your referral partners. But it's really just, if you can't connect with somebody, but you're like, man, those people would be, that business would be a fantastic referral source for us. And again, this is a B2B play, right? It's not you're not reaching out to consumers. There are referral strategies for consumers, but it's entirely different. Right. But this is a fantastic way to really build that referral network and start to communicate and show value for each other.
Why is that important?
Because if you can motivate and inspire people to send you referrals, even if it's your customers or these referral partners, they become your sales force, right? And that is a fantastic win for your business.
Yeah. And specifically building a referral partner network. I mean, in BNI, I think we talk about a golden goose referral source, where if you can build that relationship. So if you're a painting contractor, for example, and you built a relationship with an interior designer, that interior designer literally could introduce you to dozens and dozens of clients and refer you, or a real estate agent, it could also do that. So, you make one investment to build a deeper relationship. And what I love about the letter you talked about, Ian, is it's not the norm, right? I mean, it's not just a, hey, me, refer me. That turns people off, and those get put into the trash can or hopefully recycle bin right away. But if you're giving them value and saying, hey, here's an example, here's what works for us, but I want to get this information so I can be a referral partner to you. I love that idea. I think that's a great opportunity.
Yeah, and you're making it easy for them, right? Which is, I think, the key. The other thing I didn't say, which I probably should have, is the reason referrals are so important. And I think we all intrinsically know this, but the reason they're so important is because when somebody who's a trusted person in somebody else's life already, whether it's B2B, B2C, and they refer you to them, you just skip ahead on that know, like, trust phase of the marketing hourglass. You've skipped right to the trust because somebody who's trustworthy to them has referred you, and that's a fantastic leap forward for a business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's an opportunity, for a more of a B2C kind of a play where you might send something to your existing customers and say, hey, if you refer us, anybody who signs up, with us, we'll buy you dinner or something like that. And you give them an incentive, and then they can potentially generate, one or several referrals back to you. And I think a letter can still be a very effective way, or a mailing can be a very effective way to do that. Obviously, digital, can work as well. But there may be a novelty factor right now for using mail because mail volumes are down significantly.
Yeah, and give them an Uber Eats gift card or something like that. That's gonna give them options, right?
Yeah, exactly. Jen, what risks, if any, do you run if you send a direct mail campaign?
Absolutely. I've got a whole list here. So the first risk, I guess, would be convincing your client that this old-fashioned medium still works, for sure. So once you get over that, you got okay, so did it actually arrive? It depends. So Ian mentioned sending everything from postcards through to lumpy mail, right? If you're sending something a little higher ticket, you're probably going to have some tracking on there. If you're sending just a swath of 100,000 postcards, it's a whole different ball game. So did it arrive? Paul mentioned about your list. So what is your list health like? I mean, it's fine to get all excited about sending out direct mail, but is it going to the right person? Do you have the most updated information? So your list has to be right. Now, we talked a little bit about the attitude of your client agreeing to do a direct mail campaign. What about the attitude about the person receiving direct mail? So is it the kind of thing that, that's one unknown. Is it going to land in their mailbox and they're going to be excited as we all are on the podcast here to receive something, or are they just going to think, what is this, outdated? And then that would come through to what is it that you're sending? What are you designing? Whether if it's a piece of lumpy mail, what exactly is it? Does it reflect well on the brand? Does it reflect well on the product or service that you want the person to buy from you? So it's going to take a longer lead time to do that, either sourcing the products or if you're designing something, right, getting it designed, getting it printed, the whole bit. So longer lead time there. That also equates to a bigger budget you're going to have with that. So definitely. The other thing too is I just thought of this as well. Unlike any kind of digital campaign, you're not able to change it on the fly, right? You're kind of locked in for a certain amount of time. The campaign's running, and away you go. So, but even after all those things to consider, it's still an applicable campaign. Is still an applicable choice, depending on what you're selling, for sure.
Yeah. And I suppose it also kind of comes into, do you have a relationship with some folks already that you're sending the mail to? If you don't, and it's purely a cold list, I think there is a potentially, I don't think it's a super great risk, but I think there is a potential risk that you can alienate certain customers, just because you sent them a mail piece and they didn't want to get it, and to think back about, political campaign experience that I, in some campaigns I've worked with, you don't want to ever motivate the other side, so if you send a mail piece to somebody, it can actually motivate the other side to take action and be even more responsive to that other side. So it can actually have potentially a negative effect. And I think that's where, it's interesting to watch the dynamics of political mail, which is a completely different topic, but it is fascinating. And there are certainly, it's not risk free. I mean, there are certainly some potential risks, but I think there are a lot of potential upsides as well.
Absolutely.
So let's see. You guys have any other thoughts? Any final thoughts on what we've talked about so far?
I was going to jump in with just one last thing, and I remember this happening in one of the campaigns that we did. So we, as in the folks in the agency and our client, we would have ourselves on the list as a seed name, just to receive the piece, as if we were, the actual targeted person to receive it. And sometimes, and this is something that you just either have to design for, or you just have to just think, it's part of doing this kind of campaign. When any kind of mail piece goes through the mail system, it might get a little dog-eared. It might get a little, looking worse for wear as it shows up in the mailbox. So that's something that you have to consider as well. I remember we sent, it was on a different campaign, some of these letters, and some of the envelopes that I received as a seed name on there were a little bit dog-eared. One was a little bit ripped, and you could just see that, it went through the machine a little bit, maybe oddly spaced. So it just does affect, the impression. I mean, your average person would just be able to say, oh, the mail machine, it beat this thing up. But again, when you're putting so much time and effort and money into, having something represent the brand right, you do have that, that third party unknown about how it's actually being handled when it gets from point A to point B. So.
Yeah. That's a great point. And it is super important if you're going to be doing a direct mail piece to make sure that you do send one to yourself, because you do want to make sure that they're being delivered, and you want to have an idea of when they're being delivered. Especially in this age, it's taken mail longer typically to be delivered. And so it's just a good idea to do that. You may, the inclination may be, I want to save the money. I want to focus all my money on going to customers, but it really is a valuable thing to do.
And just in addition to that, you were talking about letters and how they can get mangled. If you're doing lumpy mail, check the durability of the item or pack it really well. You may not want to send glass or mugs, or if you do, make sure you pack it really well. But yeah, the last point I wanted to make, guys, was really about, I know we always go back to this, but it's so important, strategy. You absolutely should be thinking about this as part of your overall marketing strategy. You should understand and define what success looks like for this campaign. Like, if you want it to be successful, how many customers do you need to land in order to break even and then go far beyond that? So in order to know that, you need to know the value of a customer, the lifetime value of a customer, how many of them you have to land. You need to do the cost investment and return breakdown so you get the ROI. I think that's so important because I do see some companies who traditionally do direct mail and that's all they do. And I think they've lost sight of that because they just have a feeling it's still working, but they're not necessarily tracking it. So strategy, and bubble wrap.
So, go ahead, Paul.
I would say to put some thought and planning into it. I think every door direct mail, EDDM is great, but I think it has contributed to this idea of just doing this one big mass mailing. But you can use EDDM in combination with your marketing funnel, and I think people lose sight of that because it's takes some time to plan it out and use it properly, and it will be more effective. And even Google uses direct mail, so obviously it's not dead.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So, Jen, you and Ian kind of talked about this here just a minute ago. I mean, if you're sending something that's got a little bit more value to it, or it needs to convey really strong brand message and you can't afford for it to get dog-eared or whatnot, do you look at sending it out through other channels than just the postal service? I mean, do you want to use like, a FedEx or a UPS or DHL or somebody like that? I mean, and does that make sense?
Yeah, I think sometimes it does. I mean, obviously it's going to cost you a little bit more, but I know from personal experience, we did have, we were sending out, these were like 6 and 8 page brochures that we didn't want to fold. So we wanted them to come out, letter size. And with DHL, we were able to have those wrapped in plastic so that, so nothing got ripped. So that was a way that we were able to solve that. The other thing you can do is talk to your designer about that and really say, okay, we've got this. It's going through the mail system. What do you think we can do? And they may say, okay, we're going to use different colors on the envelope to hide any kind of dog-earedness that will happen, or we'll use this weight of paper. So do get your designer involved as well. Or if you're with a promotional products company, let them know the whole kind of series of where this thing is going to, go through on its journey. And they may be able to really give you some good advice on that.
Yeah. That makes me think, we haven't really talked about what are the cost elements of putting together a direct mail campaign. Any of you want to talk about what those are? I mean, for example, you've got printing and...
Yeah, you got, well, first of all, yeah. Okay, so list cleaning. So you got to have a list. And then, are you taking an in-house list? Are you buying a list, depending on where you are in the world? How clean is the list? Do you have to pay for the cleaning? And then what is it that you're sending out? If you're getting something, even if it's something as simple as a letter, are you getting that designed? You're going to have designer costs on it, a couple of rounds of revisions for sure. Then you're actually going to get it printed. So what kind of weight of printer are you going to, or printing paper, paper are you going to get it printed on? And then you got to do fulfillment. So that piece, that letter has to somehow get put into the envelope. I know it sounds pretty basic, but when you're doing, 100,000 at a time, there's a fulfillment center that can help you with that. What are you doing for postage? Are you getting a certain bulk rate? And then, to send it out. So, and then what are you doing with that piece of mail? So if you're driving the person back to, say, a landing page, you got to get that all designed. If you're having someone like in our one example, it was the salesperson that was actually calling to follow up. So it was part of, his regular work in order to secure his commission to do that. But still, that's got to be planned out and done. So things have to be planned out in a budget. I guess it really is time and money, because when you send something out, you want the follow-up to be available like within a certain amount of time. So that landing page has to be up. Or in the case of having someone follow up with a real phone call, that's got to be done within, a week to 10 days of receiving the piece, maybe even a shorter amount of time, because people are going to forget about it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, a CRM, I think, is really important too, especially if you're dealing with a smaller list. And then one thing I think that was implied but wasn't spoken outright is a copywriter. If you want to actually get people to act, you need great copy. We talked about design, but I mean, man, those words need to differentiate you and get people to act. And a good copywriter is worth their weight in gold. Dan's not here to support them, so I'm here to mention that.
What do you do?
True.
Text you?
So true.
Yeah, that's a great summary list. So so I think that's a great place to wrap up today. This has been a really cool topic, and I think there's a lot of opportunity here. And it certainly, it's not for every business, maybe equally as much, but I think there's a great opportunity for many businesses to take advantage of using direct mail. And I do think there's a novelty factor that makes it may be even more effective than a lot of people tend to think about it. So with that, I will wrap up, and thanks so much to the panelists for your great answers. Take care.